Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théâtres, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
What do you mean by this confirmation bias?
Confirmation bias, which runs across every ideology, is the instinct to see new information as confirming what you already believe.
And when you look at that in this context, do you have to be in on it to abuse it? Would Donald Trump, who you know, would he be familiar with this term?
He wouldn't be familiar with the term, I would suspect, but he would be very familiar with the technique to play to people's confirmation bias. So he knows that, for example, the core base that he's always appealing to, the big confirmation bias they have is that the bad people are out to get them, that it's not their fault, that somebody else is to blame. And so he goes into a second technique, which is gaslighting. He says, what you see as blue is actually red. And then he repeats that over and over again until people begin to doubt their own reality.
You're saying something really important, because if it works as gaslighting, in your theory, it both appeals to the people who feel in on it while maddening or even confusing a lot of other people.
Yeah, I think it first confuses those people whose bias it reinforces. It confuses them because even though they have that bias, in order to make it okay, they have to tell themselves that what is true is not true and what is not true is true. The opposition is outraged because it isn't true. And what's so difficult for all of us who are stunned by the power of deceit from Trump is that he can get away with it. And it puts us into an emotional state. It puts us into a fear state. And so he's kind of got the fear of aroused in the opposition and the confusion aroused in those who believe fundamentally that the worldview he's expressing is true, even though the facts he's expressing are not true.
Is that something that is unique to people who really don't care about the facts? Or is it something that anyone can abuse?
It's an enormous advantage if you don't care about the facts, because what's happening with Trump right now, as the circle closes and as he sees the confirmation bias that always works on Trump is that the world is out to get him, that he either creates fear or he succumbs to fear. And right now, that's the way he's seeing the world. And so everything that comes along reinforces that. And if you've got very few good things happening and a lot of bad things happening, and you have that personality and that confirmation bias, what you're doing is you're getting more and more paranoid. You're getting more and more detached from reality.
So there are the ethics of that, which is something that your work is focused on, and calling it out, saying that's wrong, let's deal with it. Then there's the strategic utility of it, which is you're describing something in a fascinating way that appears to be working. There is an oppositional resistance movement against Donald Trump that is powering an incredible amount of energy and attention in the country right now. But what you're describing is a process whereby he has maintained an oppositional environment for him and his supporters, even though they're in charge of everything.
What Democrats and opponents of Trump get wrong over and over again is to try to argue the merits, is try to prove that the lie is a lie, instead of recognizing that what they need to appeal to is the bias in the people who are supporting him. What they need to do is be able to say, we're better at getting those bad people that are out there after you than Donald Trump is. And to have them feel that. Trump himself is so aggrieved, is so angry, that they can relate to him as one of them because they're angry too. So reason actually becomes undermining to your argument.
It's amazing what you say it that way, because I was just reading James Comey's book, and one of the things he does is the very mistake you just identified, which is trying to use merits to win over bad faith liars. And it's fascinating to read him years later, still explaining why he was going to win these people over, like he doesn't understand that they're liars out to get him, and that's part of what you're identifying. So, briefly.
Let me say one last thing.
Yes, sir.
What we say to leaders, Trump's a leader, we can't say it to him, but what we say to leaders every day is the key to your being able to manage in a complex world is to ask yourself over and over 2 questions. 1, what am I not seeing? 2, what else might be true? That's how you expand your world.
I love that. And I've heard you say, what am I not seeing? The question that is the enemy of ego, because ego tells you've already seen everything.
Confirmation bias.
Sir.
Nice to see you
Tony
again.
Schwartz, we'll have
Thank
you back again.
It is the 20th of April of 2018, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam, and our daily special is Blue Moon Spirits Fridays, because we are all Nighthawks in the Diner of Life. Oh, happy 420. Hopefully it makes you happy. It's either uplifting or it could just, nail you to the couch. And maybe that's uplifting by definition as well. Well, enough of that. The Comey memos were released by the GOP, and the GOP thought it would make Comey look bad, and it has had the opposite effect. The leader of the free world has no comment because, Angela Merkel is pretty busy with what she's doing. Now, Trump, he was just going off on Twitter, as he usually does, when he's not playing golf. So he is at Mar-a-Lago. So maybe he'll head to the golf course at some point. But not a happy fellow. No, not at all. My gosh. So, that's the big news of the day. I watched a bit of Maddow as she interviewed Comey last night, and the memos were released just as Comey was sitting down with her. I should also add the memos were released unbeknownst to anybody that they would be, except, I don't know, I'm sure Devin Nunes knew, and a few others as well, because if you're on the Russian payroll, which seems to be, if not all, then at least most of the GOP, you got to do the work. You gotta do Vlad's work. There's no other way around it. Yeah. So, you heard about that high school that's for days and days have been surrounded by pickup trucks with Confederate flags and intimidating the black students on campus? They closed the school. So yeah, it's kind of a dangerous situation. And it looked to me like the trucks were students of the high school. I don't know, maybe the White Nationalist Club. I think that could have been it. And so they closed that school down. That's to me, that's quite stunning. Because I thought racism was over when the black guy was president. And I don't know. John Barron said that Trump was extremely rich, and Forbes took John Barron's word on it. And now they're like shocked that was really Donald Trump sneaking onto Forbes, because he's not that rich. Everybody knows that. Mike Pompeo is begging Rand Paul for an endorsement, and I don't know. Maybe we'll find out if that's the case. You never know about Rand Paul and his climb for power. What are we attending to today? Because it is 420, and we could get sidetracked quite easily if we don't, bear down. Or as we used to say back in the day, maintain. Come on, man, maintain. Well, our Gaslighter-in-Chief sat down with Tony Schwartz and wrote Art of the Deal. Actually, it was Tony Schwartz who wrote Art of the Deal, and but he had to get into the brain of his subject. Enough so that he knows his subject inside and out. And, so confirmation bias. Now, I got to tell you, I hope that we're not part of our own confirmation bias, because we're supposed to be more severe critical thinkers than that. But need to look out for it. But gaslighting, this guy's been gaslighting since, I don't know, before his dad kicked him out and put him in his first military school that he got kicked out of. And there were several military schools he got kicked out of until they found the military-themed school that would keep him, because money talks. Or as Bob Dylan said, money swears. Well, on the rest of the menu, a shockingly racist IQ map emerges on the campus of Cal Poly San Luis Obispo after students protest against a frat's blackface photos. And they have shut down the whole Greek system at the Cal Poly campus. When I went to Cal Poly Pomona, now those are sister schools, we were the Mustangs and they're the Broncos. So when I went to Cal Poly Pomona, there were no frats. In fact, I tried to play sports there, and they moved all the jocks into the regular student housing. Oh my God, we were supposed to be like regular students. No, I was actually an advocate for that because I hated the prima donna BS that jocks were supposed to get. Oh yeah, put some water in my mouth. I can't do it myself. Well, actually, when I coached, you usually have to do that because, getting people to hydrate, it's really hard, because they're doing other things, and no matter what you say, they won't. So you send, a trainer over there and squirt some water in their mouth, or a liquid with electrolytes and other mineral substances. But regardless, I used to think that was like the height of prima donna. I can't squirt liquid into my own mouth. Give me a break. So, yeah, they'd come over to me, try to squirt it in my mouth. I said, give me that thing. I'll do it myself. So when I got to Cal Poly, I was all for living in the general student population because that's where I was going to be hanging out anyway. So we didn't have sororities and fraternities. They were looked down upon. I mean, come on, that was the establishment, man. That's the man. And, a bunch of socias. I mean, we were doing something much more important. And that was changing the world while reading copious amounts of Castaneda's The Lessons of Don Juan and doing a little bit of personal research ourselves out in the desert. Very important. 23 years ago, after the attack, violent alt-right members consider Oklahoma City bomber Timothy McVeigh to be their hero. Of course they do. And it's not a secret. It hasn't just happened. He was their hero then, too. And the International Association of Chiefs of Police reject the dangerous NRA-backed gun bill. Yeah. Every state has to honor another state's open carry or concealed carry. You have to do it. And police chiefs say, nope, that's pretty damn dangerous. After the break, we'll move to the chef's table where a GOP senator with his words here, 20 kids and grandkids, has no idea what a diaper bag is. Well, because that's women's work, isn't it? And your dietary future shows more bugs as a main dish and a lot less meat on the side. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. you go to the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, you'll notice on the right-ish of the page is the chat room link in which our roaring girl, Kelly Lincoln, monitors quite frequently and diligently, I might add. To the left-ish of the chat room link is the donate, or are the donate and contribute buttons, and thank you for your generosity. That pays our bills, and we are really unable to do this without you, so thank you very much for that. You can follow Netroots Radio on Twitter at Netroots Radio. Tom pretty much takes care of that with the pithy remarks, and we'll get back to you too. And you could look up Netroots Radio on Facebook, because we're there in whatever capacity. It's there if you'd like to be there. We don't keep any of your data. I don't know about, Mark, so we know all about him. You can follow me on Twitter at Justice Putnam, and also check out the show notes and links diary that I put up on Daily Co's, and I'm on Daily Co's as Justice Putnam. Podcasts of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy can be found by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iTunes, and wherever fine podcasts can be found. Oh, yeah. Okay, let's get into this first article here by Dominique Jackson out of Raw Story. Now, there are two Cal Polys, California Polytechnic Institutes, and one is in San Luis Obispo, which a lot of people think is, and rightfully so, is the much nicer campus because it's right there on the beach. I mean, you can walk to the beach. The one in Pomona is along the Interstate 10 in a gully near Mount San Antonio. I got to tell you, in Oregon, Mount San Antonio's a hill. Okay, but it's a mountain there. And there's a junior college, Mount San Antonio, on the I guess it would be the northwest side of the mount, and then Cal Poly is over on the eastern side or so, eastern southern side. I'm getting orientated here because California is a little bit different on the axis as it dips back into east, for the continent and all that. But regardless, that campus is actually quite beautiful. A lot of botanical gardens there, the Pomona campus in which I attended, and very beautiful, well maintained. I actually really enjoyed going to Cal Poly, though it is a much more, both schools are much more conservative in many respects. I went to Cal Poly Pomona when one of President Gerald Ford's sons were going there. I never talked to the guy because he was usually surrounded by, Secret Service. And to me, that was sort of like, I'm anti-war. You don't know what those guys are thinking. At least I didn't. I found out. And so this incident out of the San Luis Obispo campus is disheartening, though I have to say not surprising. Racially incendiary flyers, graffiti, and vandalism were found early Tuesday morning across the campus at the California Polytechnic State University. Yeah, they don't tell you it's in San Luis Obispo. Apparently, Dominique doesn't know there's two campuses. Okay, it's not an isolated incident, and for the past few weeks, Cal Poly has seen racial tensions increase on school grounds. Just a week ago, the student body protested over a fraternity posting photos in blackface. Professor Neil McDougall found the racial attacks inside the university buildings and posted the images to Facebook. In his Facebook post, Professor McDougall said, "I know that Cal Poly President Armstrong has asserted that a racial culture does not exist at Cal Poly, but it makes me wonder what kind of culture these images represent. All of this was centered around my office hallway this morning. I think we have to move beyond protecting the Cal Poly brand and start dealing with the Cal Poly reality," he wrote. And what had happened is it looks like he has posters and whatnot. The professors will have various things outside their offices. Notes, newspaper articles, and this professor has posters, and that he's asserting that he is working with and for undocumented students and families, that he's that kind of a guy. Sort of like the security of academe, you would think. And the posters or whatnot were defaced, ripped up, torn up, cut, a bit of racist graffiti. So the McDougal said he posted the images on Facebook to raise awareness about the issue and to call out the school for being overly concerned with their brand instead of supporting students and working to fix campus culture. I really think that they're trying to protect the brand, he said. Everything seems to be soft-pedaled. The flyers claimed that black people were a different species, followed by racial slurs written on the bathroom walls. In an interview with public radio station KCBX, McDougal said, I was targeted as someone who has outwardly supported undocumented students and supported inclusion. I think it's really the slashing of the sign that disturbed me. That is fundamentally a violent act. Spokesman Matt Lazier for Kyle Pauley said in a statement, the university is seeing many postings around campus expressing a wide variety of viewpoints, some of which include hateful and racist comments. Desperate acts of a few who aim to spread hate and divide our community, Lazier stressed that the school abhors and denounces hateful and racist speech and actions. Well, do something about it then. Next offering here on the Bistro Cafe, part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Blue Moon Spirits Fridays, because we are all Nighthawks in the Diner of Life. This offering is by the great Sarah K. Burris out of Rostory. By today's standards, Oklahoma City bomber Timothy McVeigh would fit in well with the alt-right. 23 years later to the day, and that was yesterday, of course, some even consider McVeigh to be a hero for killing 168 people, including 19 children. Alt-right members have been praising McVeigh, according to a Buffalo News report, and they like him. They fit into the mold of a lone wolf. Most recently, Jerry Drake Varnell was arrested for attempting to reenact the OKC bombing at a bank just blocks from where the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building once stood. I should note, Timothy McVeigh wasn't really a lone wolf. Not in the sense that they're saying. He had a lot of help. He was radicalized. He was a member of the order. That's not lone wolf BS. Though he's looked on and identified as such. But let's be clear. There were some conspirators that I think are still in jail to this day. What happened in Oklahoma City was not an attack on America, it was retaliation, Varnell said last year prior to his trek to the city in what he thought was a vehicle bomb. Retaliation against the freedoms that have been taken away from the American people. The Southern Poverty Law Center reported at least 3 people arrested in 2017 said that they admired the Oklahoma City bomber. A member of the neo-Nazi website Daily Stormer even proposed building a memorial to the convicted mass murderer who was put to death on June 11th of 2001. Think of it. A gigantic bronze statue of Timothy McVeigh, poised triumphantly atop a Ryder truck, said Daily Stormer webmaster Andrew Weave Auernheimer, who considers himself a neo-Nazi instead of a member of the alt-right. Because the alt-right, I think, are the dapper neo-Nazis. And the ones who are not alt-right, the regular neo-Nazis, they're not so dapper. I'm not joking, Auernheimer added. This should be done. Imagine how angry it would make people. Yeah, damn right. Not enough to go to war over, fella. We'll just regulate the shit out of you. In addition to Varnell, the SPLC noted police in Tampa investigated Brandon Russell for a double murder involving a neo-Nazi last year. He possessed the same bomb-making materials that McVeigh used more than 2 decades ago. Pennsylvania Brian Moelis was arrested in Washington, D.C. with an assault rifle, handgun, and 90 rounds of ammunition at the Trump Hotel. He told an FBI informant he wanted to be just like Timothy McVeigh. In the past year, Jeremy Christian, who was also another anti-government white supremacist who supported McVeigh, he was charged with murder after slashing the throats of 2 men who were trying to help 2 Muslim women, and that Christian was harassing on an Oregon commuter train. May all the gods bless Timothy McVeigh, a true patriot, he had posted on Facebook. While there haven't been any knowingly McVeigh-inspired terrorists arrested this year, one anti-government activist, reminiscent of him, is running for governor in Nevada. Well, I don't know, it makes sense because, they tested atomic and nuclear devices in the state. Norm Olson, one of the Bundy supporters, said he had a message for members of Congress. Timothy McVeigh died for your sins. Really? Okay. The Buffalo News cited psychology professor Tom Pizzinski, who explained that it is clear racists and anti-government activists have felt emboldened since Donald Trump took office. It's not that many people, but it's hard to tell how many because they usually don't go public except in the fringe groups they belong to. Well, once again, they're not really lone wolves now, are they? Up here in the Bistro Cafe, part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, is an article by Eric Bullard out of Share Blue Media, pushing yet another radical NRA-backed gun bill that is wildly unpopular with voters in both parties. The GOP now finds itself under pressure from police chiefs nationwide who are demanding the party walk away from its latest extremist initiative. I'm sorry, but there's a lot of Russian money running the NRA right now. Let's be clear, okay? And they've got something else in mind here. They're not looking for comity. I don't think so. A bill that the Republican-controlled House passed late last year in the wake of the Las Vegas gun massacre, the Concealed Carry Reciprocity Act, would force all 50 states to acknowledge concealed carry permits, even if those states didn't issue the permits. In other words, someone with a concealed carry permit from Utah, which demands virtually no requirements for the license, could travel to Massachusetts and still legally carry that concealed weapon, even though the Bay State has some of the toughest gun laws in the country. Well, the International Association of Chiefs of Police, which represents 8,000 police departments across the U.S., sees this as madness. Well, the NRA cheered the bill's House passage as being its highest legislative priority. It also allows visitors to national parks and other federal lands to carry concealed weapons. Well, that makes me feel very happy, safe, and tranquil now, doesn't it? Yet, like so many of the NRA's radical gun initiatives the GOP supports, the latest runs counter to public opinion, even among Republican voters, because instead of relaxing concealed carry laws, most Americans want them tightened up. Yeah, you would think. The police chief said this legislation is a dangerous encroachment on individual state efforts to protect public safety, and it would effectively nullify duly enacted state laws and hamper law enforcement efforts to prevent gun violence. Well, I think that if you are a hostile foreign power who wanted to see the destruction of the great experiment in this representative democratic republic, and you were pumping a lot of rubles into various groups to affect that, well, do you really want gun violence to be diminished? Okay, let's get to our break then, and we'll come back and go through weather from around the world, and then we will finish up with the stories that we've curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Steve Mirsky. Tomorrow is April 20th, 420. It's sometimes called a high holiday because for a lot of people, 420 is Marijuana Day. And for them, it's kind of a tradition to start lighting up at 4:20 p.m. on 420, which led a couple of researchers in Canada to wonder if there was any evidence for an increase in traffic deaths related to the occasion. They got access to the United States National Traffic Safety Administration's Fatality Analysis Reporting System, which tracks all public road accidents in which at least one person died. And they looked at the numbers on 420 from 4:20 p.m. through midnight, from 1992 through 2016. They also examined traffic deaths related to accidents on the day 1 week earlier and the day 1 week later during the same hours. The result, a 12% increase in fatalities related to traffic accidents on 420 after 4:20 p.m. compared with the control dates. And for drivers 20 and under, the figure was much higher, more than a 30% increase in some states. The research is in the journal JAMA Internal Medicine. Of course, this study does not prove that impaired driving caused by marijuana consumption was the cause of the higher death rate. For example, could be that drivers crashed while simply trying to light up. Scientific American has long supported making it easier for researchers to study marijuana's medicinal effects, as well as decriminalization in general. But we're still against driving while intoxicated. So if you're going to be token, keep those pistons from stroking. The pistons in the engine of the car. Just don't drive. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Steve Mirsky.
You are listening to 60 Second Civics, the daily podcast of the Center for Civic Education. I'm Mark Gage. Many of the American founders gave their first loyalty to their home states. From the very beginning of the Revolution, however, George Washington was a nationalist. His country was America, not Virginia, and what America could become through a strong union of the states. Later, as president, he would declare that Americans as citizens by birth or choice must always exalt the just pride of patriotism more than any appellation derived from local discriminations. In 1787, Washington's concerns about the disintegration of the nation prompted him to serve as a delegate to the Constitutional Convention in Philadelphia. He was convinced of the need for a strong national government. Washington presided over the convention, and his support was key to ratification of the newly proposed Constitution. He spoke rarely during the debates, in part because he was the presiding officer. That's all for today's podcast. 60-Second Civics, where civic education only takes a minute.
How close to death do you have to be before the Federal Bureau of Prisons will let you go home to die? I'm Bill Newman, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute. The criteria for eligibility for compassionate release in the federal system, what states generally call medical parole, are straightforward. A federal inmate must have less than 18 months to live or be completely disabled, and he must have an acceptable home waiting. But those are only the initial hoops. The prison warden must then back the request for release, then the paperwork goes to the Central Bureau of Prisons office for approval or disapproval, and then the application is subject to review by a deputy attorney general, and then it finally goes to a court. Along the way, no means no. Application denied, finished, done, nothing left to do. Yes means another step. As recently reported in the New York Times, between 2013 and 17, the Bureau of Prisons approved only 6% of the applications received for compassionate release. And so, 87-year-old inmates convicted of tax fraud with less than 2 years to serve, unconscious and on a respirator, die in federal prison, shackled to a bed under constant guard. That's how the family gets to say goodbye. A bill is pending in Congress for the petition to go directly to a judge, so maybe at least there could be a decision about compassionate release before the inmate dies. The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU because freedom can't protect itself.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1857. That was the day that Clarence Darrow was born in Kinsman, Ohio. Darrow was perhaps the original U.S. labor lawyer. Known to be a friend to underdogs, Darrow once supposedly said, quote, "Lost causes are the only ones worth fighting for." Clarence learned his concern for his fellow man from his family. His childhood home was a stop on the Underground Railroad. In 1887, Clarence moved to Chicago to pursue his law career. But his first big client was not an underdog. In fact, he ended up working as the general counsel for the Chicago and Northwestern Railroad. But then the 1894 strike by Pullman workers led him to quit his job. And instead, he defended Eugene V. Debs, the president of the American Railway Union. Debs had been imprisoned for his support of the striking Pullman workers. The case went all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. Although Darrow lost, his reputation as a lawyer for labor was sealed. Over the years, he would go on to successfully defend Big Bill Haywood, leader of the industrial workers of the world, when he was accused of murder. Darrow's most well-known case, however, was the Scopes trial. Darrow defended a high school teacher, John Scopes, who had the audacity to teach evolution to high school students in Tennessee, something that was quite controversial at the time. The trial became a major news event. 200 reporters from across the nation covered the case. Darrow won, which was seen as a major shift towards the teaching of science in the classroom. Clarence Darrow is still beloved in Chicago, which holds a ceremony each year remembering his work as a champion of the people. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
From UN headquarters in New York, I'm Luke Vargas with your World in 2 minutes. America's top nuclear disarmament official says the U.S. is working with European allies to craft a supplemental agreement to the landmark 2015 nuclear deal with Iran. That deal would touch areas of Iran's behavior omitted from the previous agreement.
Those discussions are ongoing. They're intense.
Ambassador Robert Wood is the U.S. representative to the UN Conference on Disarmament in Geneva.
The President's made very clear what we will do if we're unable to deal with some of these questions about sunset provisions, about Iran's behavior, overall behavior in the region, its ballistic missile program. So these issues have to be dealt with.
Woods said Iran would not be a signatory of the supplemental nuclear deal, meaning the deal would amount to the U.S. and fellow nuclear signatories, the UK, France, and Germany, placing additional conditions on Iran before that country would be allowed back into the international economy. That's likely to anger Iranian officials who've already threatened to exit the nuclear deal, since many banks, skittish about the longevity of the agreement, still refuse to do business with the country. President Trump faces a May 12th deadline to decide whether to continue complying with the nuclear deal. And global debt levels have surpassed $160 trillion, according to the IMF. That amounts to an average of 105% of GDP across developed economies, levels not seen since World War II. Those high figures, paired with what the bank sees as a strong global economy, led the IMF to urge countries to pay down their debt while the sun is shining. And a number of countries are likely to do that in the coming years, with the notable exception of the United States. The IMF said last year's Republican tax cuts, paired with the substantial increase in government spending, will, quote, give rise to overall deficits in excess of $1 trillion over the next 3 years. That would bring total U.S. debt to 117% of GDP by 2023. Luke Vargas, The United Nations.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Blue Moon Spirits Fridays is our daily special because we are all Nighthawks in the Diner of Life. And if you want a suggestion, a recommendation, a French 77 in these times is the perfect way to imbibe. So go ahead, try it. You'll see. Yep. Okay, so let's start with weather from around the world, and we always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River and the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 42 degrees Fahrenheit. Looks like we're going to be going up to maybe about 76 today. We'll see. It's warm in the sun. It's still a tad chilly in the shade, so we're experiencing spring as it should be. No chance of rain for the foreseeable... Well, actually, no chance of rain today, so we will dry out a tad. I've got a lot of work in the garden. I've got a lace leaf Japanese maple to plant, and I've got a good blood Japanese maple to plant, and the good blood takes a much larger hole. And it's going to be a huge, it's going to be a fair-sized tree. And I can't wait to see the filtered light as the sun falls through the cosmos and touches upon the face of the earth, which we are, living on. Yeah, like parasites. Oh, my, oh, my, oh, my. Okay, so it's going to be warm, and I've got work to do. And so then we'll start getting small chances of rain here. There is a storm north of us that will be coming in, in about 3 days. And they say it's going to miss us. But I think we might get some rain out of it. And I got to hope, because I always say minerals from the sky are always better than what comes out of your hose bib. All right, no data on air quality. We do have winds out of the north currently at about 5 to 10 miles per hour. Oh, I'm sorry, they're out of the east at 3 miles per hour. They're going to change to out of the north at 5 to 10 miles per hour about noonish. And then they'll switch to out of the west at 5 to 10 miles per hour later this afternoon and tonight. Pressure is rising at 30.25 inches. Visibility is 9 miles. And humidity is 87% here in the state of Oregon. And, I derisively referred to Oregon as like the third world country of Oregon. And I only mention that because of certain things I've become accustomed to in civilization. Like, outside of, good Chinese food, good sushi, good seafood for that matter. you can't find any good Pakistani food, let alone Tunisian food. Come on. Maybe a fair Indian food here and there. But, no, I was talking more about, internet and other aspects, let alone, the rampant right-wing media that seems to dominate the local markets here. Ooh, scary, scary, scary. So I didn't mean to call Oregon a third world country, okay? I meant to say the much smaller state north of California. And, we get some of California by osmosis. And some people like it and a lot of people don't. Alrighty, weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these personal purchased weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people live around the world. London is 78 degrees and sunny. Paris is 85 degrees and sunny. Oh my God, the flowers and the scents. Oh, you should go. Rome is 78 and sunny. And I got to tell you, Rome is beautiful this time of year too. Plus, the wafting of, a slightly bitter, smoky, burnt taste or smell of coffee. Espresso wafting through the plazas and the squares. Kiev is 64 and fair with wind. Kabul is 55 and mostly cloudy, and I bet wedding parties are happy for that. Hong Kong is 71 and partly cloudy. Tokyo is 63 and clear. Sydney, Australia is 66 degrees and partly cloudy. San Francisco, California is 49 degrees and sunny. And New York is 42 degrees and fair. And it's springtime in New York. And that is weather from around the world brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these personal purchased weather stations somewhere on their property. And these people live around the world. Also, I should mention that it being 420 today, I would never recommend that anybody should be smoking pot. Okay, now eating it, I think that's perfectly fine. But some people, the harshness of the flame and the irritant of the smoke, might be a little too irritating. So take care. All right. All right. So our first article here about this GOP senator that has 20 kids and grandkids, and he doesn't know what the hell a diaper bag is, just shows he's been an absent father. This is by Oliver Willis out of Share Blue Media. In response to the birth of Senator Tammy Duckworth's daughter, several male Republican senators have displayed a shocking ignorance and even fear about babies. They're afraid she's going to weaponize the child. What's she going to do? Use a poop bomb to force people to vote the way she wants? The baby's going to have a poop bomb. I can't be around on a poop bomb. I'll vote for whatever it is just to get away from the poop bomb. These guys. Jeez. I came up against this when I was a young father working with a major oil company by the name of Gulf Oil. And I started off as a roustabout on a A-frame where we, maintenanced wellheads and rigs, and then I made changes also. Got promoted a little bit, so I climbed to the top of the rig to make changes on the pipes going down into the hole. And then quickly I was bumped up to management because obviously the college boy knows what he's doing. And I did. And so here we are with all this smelly, from when they say from the bowels of the earth, they're not kidding. We are literally tapping into the intestines of the earth, and that's why it smells the way it does. Yeah. And here's these guys like drenched in this stuff, whining that, oh, I could never change a baby's diaper. That stuff stinks. Oh, my God. These guys definitely have a problem with scale. So, Senator Tammy Duckworth recently gave birth to daughter Maylee Pearl and is seeking to change some rules to bring the Senate into the 21st century, but they don't want that. They want it before, the terrible judicial activists who overturned, slavery. We can't have it. Well, her proposal ran into some stumbling blocks, and of course, the usual suspects. Who would they be? Republican men. Duckworth's proposed change would allow her and future new parents in the Senate to bring newborns into the chamber while casting votes so they can tend to their babies and represent their constituents. While the rule change was eventually approved, several Republican men expressed confusion, doubt, and ignorance about the basics of parenting and babies' needs. These men, who regularly legislate and opine on the needs of working families, have managed to reveal just how little they actually understand what they're talking about. Because I got to tell you, absent fathers always know best. In one exchange about whether to allow diaper bags on the Senate floor, Senator Jim Inhofe, dumb as a rock Republican from Oklahoma, cluelessly declared them obsolete. I should mention, though Oliver Willis is a great writer, the flourishes are strictly within this reporter's opinion. Okay? Please understand. I'm sorry, Oliver. Inhofe said they don't use diaper bags anymore. They're disposable diapers. And as evidence, Inhofe knew what he was talking about. He added, well, I know because I've got 20 kids and grandkids. Well, have you ever traveled with any of these kids? You carry a diaper bag and you put the disposable diapers in it, along with a change of clothes for you and the baby, and lotion and all sorts of other accoutrements, in which one cares for a child, which this man apparently never has. Well, Arkansas Senator Tom Cotton insisted he personally had no problem with the rule change, but that forcing Duckworth and other new parents to vote from the cloakroom would be a good compromise for his colleagues who had a problem. Oh, yeah, hide the women. Hide them. Well, Senator Amy Klobuchar reminded her male colleagues that Duckworth is a double amputee from her combat injuries in Iraq and mostly uses a wheelchair. Yes, you can vote from the doorway of the cloakroom, Klobuchar said, but how is she going to get to the cloakroom when it's not even wheelchair accessible? Orrin Hatch seemed to believe that the rule change would open up some sort of baby floodgate. But what if there are 10 babies on the floor of the Senate? Have you ever seen the size of a Mormon family? Come on, fella. Klobuchar said it would be a delight to have 10 babies on the Senate floor. Other senators privately worried about whether Duckworth would nurse her child or change her diapers on the floor. The comments and concerns reflect a bizarre and behind-the-times perspective on women and families in the workplace. They also show a disregard for working mothers and is such an ingrained part of the Republican Party's mindset, a party that claims to be one of family values but clearly takes issues with babies. The men pontificating incorrectly on diaper bags and worrying about the presence of infants are also setting policies regarding women and child care that affects millions of people. Out of 100 senators, only 23 are women, but just a few ticks under 60% of Americans are women. I'm sorry, a few ticks under 51%, 50.8. So maybe if there were more women in Congress, leaders wouldn't be so misinformed about parenting or so fearful of babies.
Danser maintenant sous l'été, les pieds nus dans le sable. Danser maintenant et jetez vos ennuis dans les vagues qui dansent.
All right, finishing up here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. I hope that you are sufficiently hydrated, shall we say? Even though alcohol is not known for hydration, but the exact opposite. But I hope that you've got enough of the spirits in you, because I got to tell you a little story we chefs all know. Protein is protein. There's a lot of protein out there in the world. I'm not talking on walking on 2 feet, okay? Let's not go there. But there's a lot of six-legged, eight-legged creatures that I know some people might think that even that is you don't assign those to food. But protein is protein, all right? And a variety of protein is always good, is what I say, plant-based or insect-based. So, as I think that as the climate changes, I not only think, I know, as the climate changes, there's going to be a lot more, of a kind of protein that we're just ignoring, and why would we? So, Nielsen, the consumer analytics company, the proportion of Canadians identifying as vegetarian and vegan is still relatively small. 6% and 2% respectively, but 43% of Canadians say they're planning to get more plant-based proteins in their diets. And that's higher than both the U.S. and global average. I should mention, I'm a believer in what's known as the Jeffersonian diet, the diet Thomas Jefferson in the Age of Enlightenment encouraged. And that was where meat was a condiment, and vegetables and the plant-based proteins and plants were the main dish, okay? So the meat was a side dish, a condiment, a much smaller amount that you added to. So I would say that, done correctly, and I've been around the world and I've never been afraid to eat any kind of food because I want to know. And there's a lot of insects out there that you would never know that until you do, and then you might go, oh yeah. Or if they look too much like the actual insect. Some people don't like that. Well, of course, when you go to the store to buy your chicken and your beef, you're not seeing the animal, you're seeing the package, aren't you? It's all about the senses, isn't it? That's what encourages you. So I am not against the idea within our culture of meat, that if we do live in that culture and we need to feed the world, there's a protein out there that maybe we should start incorporating. All right, so with that comes to the end of our broadcast period, and we will meet up on Monday for River City Hash Mondays. I won't have any insects on the menu for now, okay? But I might introduce a few just to show you. Bake them out. And let's see. So we will be meeting up on Monday for River City Hash Mondays. But stay tuned to Netroots Radio over the weekend. We've got some great live content produced by Netroots Radio. And also, our national content providers will be updating the news as it occurs. If Mueller, Rosenstein, or anything comes down the pike that's just, the ass hits the fan, as they say, we will be going live with a quite extensive panel to break it down for you live. So stay tuned to Netroots Radio, and we will visit with you on Monday in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théâtres, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs sous la pluie de novembre. Tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Coër. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs sous la pluie de novembre. Tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum, 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 dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum, 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 dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver, dans mon jardin d'hiver.